Hello, everybody. I like to start out when I give this talk by asking some of you to show me some hands. Could everyone in the audience who has written at least one line of code professionally the last month, put a hand up? Let me see. Good, there are some techies here. Very, very good. I have to disappoint you. I'm going to talk a lot about technology, but it's actually the other people I'm talking to. So I think most of the things I'm going to tell, you already know. It's nothing new for you there. But to the other ones, those who didn't show hands, there is one large paradox that is the cause of this talk. Very often we say, let's digitize, let's create a new product, let's experiment, as Ash talked about earlier today. And the biggest obstacle for digitalization is the IT department. And that's a total paradox. How is that possible? The tech department is your biggest obstacle for doing digitalization and change. So that got me thinking, what's happening here? And that's basically the basis of this talk. So I'm going to try, from a tech perspective, to say, what do we need to do differently to make technology become an enabler? So like powering agile business exploration, as I like to call it, developing new services and products, instead of breaking it down. So I'm going to try and give you as designers, as managers, the tools you need to understand how you need to start cooperating with those people putting their hands up here to get it right. And that's why I'm happy to be here at Tech and Design, because I think tech people and design people have to start cooperating much closer to succeed in what's ahead. But to get us started, this is how a typical project is done, especially in large corporations. First off, some from management goes to some nice conference. Gartner conference in Barcelona is a very big favorite. Or they read a McKinsey report and they see, oh, there is a new market opening up. The first time I worked with a pure way of working consultant gig, it was on a job like this. Managers have been to a conference, and it was a manager in a big energy company in Norway, and they had learned that in Norway, in 2 to 5 years, the smart home market is going to be worth 5 billion NOK. So they said, okay, with our market share, we are going to make 2 billion NOK in this market within 2 to 5 years. So before they've asked themselves, what product are we going to create? They have decided how much money to make in this segment. Okay? Then they put down a project team, and they were there to figure out how are we going to make this 2 billion NOK in this market within 2 to 5 years. So they sat down, tried to design a product, and then only after they have decided what to make in this market, they started to develop the system. Agile comes into play. You see the problem here. There is no point about being agile in your development approach only when you do software development. You have to be it throughout the whole deal. And of course, the biggest problem, and that was the problem you all see, only after you have actually done your whole product development, your whole business development, you have created your system, you launch it to the customer just to figure out nobody wants it. This is the way you typically do it. When I say agile business exploration, I say we have to explore our new business in a different way, and it looks something like this. You have to do an iteration, you have to look at the product development, the business development side, the customer experience, and the system development, all at once in a cross-functional team. You always start with the humans first. Why do we start with the humans? Well, our hardware update rate is 40,000 years. Our software update rate is like 2,000 to 5,000 years. Constant for most projects, okay? Let's take it easy. Always start with humans, employees, customers, or whatever. Be agile about everything. Look at the whole thing and be agnostic. That means never be religious. Don't let any kind of religion or myths decide. Let the fact and the evidence decide how you go about it. So when we start doing product business development like this, there are 3 major battlegrounds I think we should focus on. First off, customer experience. You all know this. After the talks we've heard, I'm not going to spend much time on it, but haven't you thought about it? Like, just a question, how many here have called the support telephone or Facebook? Whoa, no, you're not using Facebook. So what's happening here? Or Google, same question. Turn it around. Imagine you just got a new ERP system in your company and you are going to do your first travel expenses. How many think they will be able to do the first travel expenses without training and 3 calls to the customer support center? The difference here is one product is created around customer experience through and through. Whereas ERP system, accounting system, where we very often have to do our travel expense reimbursement, they are not developed for you guys, they are developed for the accounting department. And you end up having a shitty experience. That's the difference about thinking about customer experience through and through. Tech, I'm going to talk a bit more about, but it's so obvious a business battleground, we don't really need to spend that much time on it. Data science, on the other hand, that's interesting. Because, have you thought about it, especially in large corporations? How do you do decision making? And how many here knows about the term HIPPO decisions? Oh, not that many, that's cool. HIPPO decisions. HIPPO stands for highest paid person's opinion. That's a HIPPO decision. Isn't it fascinating how we do decision making in large organizations? Let's figure out who has the highest salary in the room, you decide. Yeah, it's laughable, but it's sadly real. What you are seeing in modern company, they are replacing these kind of decisions to a large degree by data-driven decision. And then you need to gather that data to make those decisions. You have to harness and harvest that data, and you have to use science to turn data into information, knowledge, and thereby informed business decision. This is a huge change in business. And that's also one of the reasons that one common topic we heard in the part before lunch today was experiments. Because that's another thing. Typically, businesses try to do their decision-making by making big, bold decisions. It's what I call big bang decisions, because that's what you can be proud of when you go and play golf with the other hippos on the golf course, you know? So they all tend to want to do big bang decisions. What you're seeing today, you're trying to reduce that to a series of small decisions, small experiments, data-informed, that might lead to big bang conclusions, but avoiding big bang decisions. And that's business experimentation right there. Here are some numbers of big companies experimenting a lot. And these are real experiments. This is not A/B tests. Okay? We're talking business experiments, as we had heard from earlier, from Riks-TV and others. And if you had your ears open when Ash talked earlier today, you would see one missing. Who is it? Facebook, exactly. More than 100,000 experiments. So I think you all know why experiments are important. I want to talk about how is it possible for Facebook to do 100,000 business experience. And they are very tied up about this. This is strategic, important information. So it's hard to come by information on how Facebook is able to do 100,000 plus experiments. But I think Mark Zuckerberg spilled the beans a bit in a podcast. So I actually have to bother you now to read a bit, because I will have 3 slides with quotes from Mark Zuckerberg from this podcast on how Facebook is doing this. Okay, so think about this. Probably 10,000 different versions of Facebook running at the same time. Interesting. Even more interesting, a single engineer at Facebook can flip out an experiment to 50,000 users. Okay, think about that. It's quite wild. It's like a mid-sized Norwegian town you can impact just because you want it and run an experiment. This is something which is fascinating, and this shows how the mindset of an organization trimmed to experiment and having a tech ability to experiment is quite different. I have to bother you to read a bit more. Next quote. Okay, what's interesting here? Look at this. The engineer, the nerd, sitting there behind his 3 screens, too high, you know, Coke, glasses, a bit chubby like me, is looking at business metrics. and exposed to business metrics. Not only can anyone flip out an experiment, you see the real business metrics in your face right afterwards. And based on that, you can see, was the experiment a success? How do I alter the experiments? What do I do next? And I'm going to show you the last quote, and then we are finished with the reading exercise for today. So here it's sad that I didn't use like the sound clip of it, because you should really hear his voice. It's like, yeah, and if it doesn't work, we really document it and stuff. Yeah, and if it works, we do it, blah. It's like, that's what experimentation is about. And when it doesn't work, you document it, you share it, you learn from it, everyone. So the question is, if your business or your projects want to get where Facebook is here, how do you do it? Well, it comes down to software. It is digital. So let's talk about what is software. Well, software should provide some business value. How does software provide business value? Basically, you have a function doing something. Hooray, it's business value. Something doesn't work. Oh, bad, it's a bug. That's it. It's as easy as that. And if I want to, I can go to management and get money to create some new kind of function. I would do it test-based. I wouldn't do it function-based. I would do it based on the customer. But in the end, that's what software provides. Well, at least this is what's easy to explain for tech people to management, because it's visible to business. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it provides what it should provide, yeah, you get it. But what's invisible for business is actually what makes Facebook able to do what they are doing. They have an architecture who enables you to flip out and run 10,000 different versions of Facebook at the same time. That doesn't come for free. And what do you think comes down here in this corner? The negative business value software can provide, which is invisible for business. It's called technical debt. And if you ask yourself, why is IT so often an obstacle to your digital endeavors as they are, the reason is technical debt. The problem is, it costs a lot of money to do something about it. And the biggest problem with that is IT people are not good at selling. So the people who understand why this is important are very often bad at politics within the organization, and they are bad at selling new endeavors to management. But guess who's good at it? Nah, very often designers and management. And this is the reason you have to come together, and you who do not write code need to understand why this is important. Go talk to your IT people, get to understand why this is important, and go together to management and do something about it. We have to look a bit more into software, and you have to understand software and IT better to get this job done. And the next thing is how we build a system. A system is basically some user logic, that's where you interact with it. Some business logic. New customer gets a credit check. Typical example of business logic. We have some data logic. We'll take care of all the data, store it. You have some system like monitoring and logging, and some system logic that makes it all come together. That was how we did it in the old days. Today, it looks like this. You separate this in different parts. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of digitalization projects are on the wrong path, because since it's best practice to separate them in the logical components, you can actually do only user logic without doing the rest. And that's what's happening around now. Because the IT department cannot provide you with the business logic you need to run your experiments, you run off and you do the user logic only, adding on to this technical debt more and more. Stop doing that. Start working with IT to actually get your new experiments done throughout the logic. And one of the most important things about that, that's the only way you produce enough data. Remember, data science was important? That's the only way you can produce enough data and get control over the data you need to continue doing this. Even worse, it's in a big corporation, because there you don't have one stack, you have many stacks. And the smartest company have done something very stupid, because they even have an extra layer making this the system that make all the other systems talk together. Single point of failure here. So this is actually the rig you see in a lot of companies. You need to help IT replace it with something like this. The reason for that is, that means that I can have one version of Facebook going and another version just by changing one of these components. I can change the business logic on how do we link two friends without changing anything else. That's experimentation based on technology. If you break your technology stack down to bits and pieces, you can start experimenting only on a little piece of the whole system, and thereby having more versions running. And that's the trick to get experimentation going. The other important trick is, if you have a stack that looks like this, all the data that goes between user logic, business logic, data logic, goes on within a system. From a vendor in a data system with the system logic you don't control. If you're able to split it up into components, you have all the data between these components in your hand. You own that data. That's data creation. So the number and volume of data created in a stack like this is much higher than in any other framework. I know this is boring. It's much more fun with nice slide with pictures on. I'm in trouble also because I see some of the designers I'm working with down there, and they haven't seen these slides before. I made them. So I'm going to get some yelling afterwards. But I know this is boring, but this is important. If you want to succeed with experimentation, experiment-driven, customer-driven, business, product, and system development, you need to get IT on board to get the effect out of it. And if you continue only doing small little nice apps with user logic, without getting IT with you to take the whole stack into an experiment-driven and customer-driven setup, you lose the data you need for the future. Because data is important. Let's see, here is a typical setup of the system today. You have system of records, that's where you keep all your recordings and data and everything. System of engagement, that's what people work with. But here is something new, system of insights. That's something we have been talking about on the tech side only for the last 5, 6 to 8 years. So if you take all the blocks I've already shown you and start spreading them into these boxes, well, basically we have, of course, the user logic here, business logic, data logic here, typically monitor and logging there. But now comes something interesting, because to be able to do this, as we saw, you need the system of insights to be across all your system and components. That cannot be one box, one monolith, as we call it, on its own. And that's important because let's say you want to do experiments, or even more important, you want to do some artificial intelligence someday. This is where you have to do it. And then you have to do it all over your data, not at one spot alone. And to get to this state, because this state is what enables Facebook to run 100,000 experiments. This way of rigging the technology enables any employee in Facebook to flip out and put out an experiment to 50,000 people and read the business metrics out of it. You can only do it by changing your IT stack. So I want you, everyone here, to ask yourselves, if you at any point discover we want to try something new, we want to run an experiment, we're going to create a new product, a new business, and test it, and the message back from IT is, yeah, great idea, but we can only do it in 4 to 6 months when the new release is there. If you get that kind of answer, you need to sit down with tech and start discussing, how can we change this? Because if you're not able to change it, it will only be experimentation on the surface, and you will not have the learning down to the bottom, and especially, you will not get the data you need. So, to sum it up a bit, first of all, if you want to be agile at a scale, that's 100,000 experiments. And I know no one in Norway is even close to that. But I kind of like stretch goals, so that's what you should probably be going for. If you want to do that, well, basically, you need the data to support those decisions, the data you gather in those experiments. So, gather all business data, always. And then, of course, you need a software architecture that works for this. So it matters. I know it's boring. I know it's bits and bytes and stuff you do not want to care about normally. But you have to start talking with your tech people, your IT people, to make this happen. And in the end, tech is limiting agile business exploration. It's a paradox, and we have to stop it. Thank you very much. That was all for my talk.